Welcome to Bath, Britain's most beautiful city. Bath is set on the banks of the Avon in the heart of the West Country and is just 1.5 hours by rail from London, or 2.5 by coach. Bath's origins go back over 20 centuries, when a pig herder with leprosy used to live in this area and found that sick animals were cured after wallowing in the mire that was the Bath Spa. Well, according to legend, he took the waters himself and was cured and later became a prince. Well, ever since then, the hot springs have played a central role in Bath's career. The Romans came and they set up a little town they called Aqua Sulis. Aqua for the water, and Sulis, the goddess that was supposed to rule around here. Well, it was an important spa complex for them, and it continued in that vein. Here in 973 AD, Edgar, the first king of all England, was crowned, in the abbey behind me. But it was the arrival of the 18th century. Then Bath was transformed into an elegant and fashionable health spa, frequented by the gentry and the royal family, in more ways than one. But enough of the history. What is there to do in Bath now, today? Well, behind me is the present abbey, built on the site of the Saxon church and completed in 1493. The abbey itself has a magnificent vaulted ceiling, along with some very strange angels on the west front. Over there are the pump rooms, which contain the Roman Baths Museum. Full of the artifacts dug from the baths in various excavations. This is one of the best places in the world to see Roman remains without actually going to Rome. Whilst back upstairs in the 20th century, one can relax in the comfortable Georgian atmosphere of the pump room, try to keep down a glass of the famous spa water, or dine in the elegant and pricey restaurant. Bath is also a city of elegant and pricey shops, and for every tourist that comes here for the history, there must be at least 2 that come to shop their hearts out. Now, back in medieval times, Bath was a walled market town. But all that remains of that for the tourist is this small piece of recently restored city wall. But if you're adventurous, underneath the city streets, you can still see the old East Gate, with the signs of damage inflicted by the horse and carts still showing. And here's the old hinge, on which the gates of the city were hung. This is the Royal Crescent, built in 1770 by John Wood the Elder. And that in the middle is the Royal Crescent Hotel. If you want to stay there, that'll cost you £400, but they will throw the scaffolding in for free. This is the Circus, built in the style of the Roman amphitheatre, made into housing by John Wood the Elder. But every house that was built here, none of them had a toilet. So that central section, now covered by trees, used to be theirs. No wonder the trees grew so large. Apart from the beautiful architecture, for which it is justly famous, Bath is also a city of gardens and parks, which has earned it the title of the Floral City. With all these sparkling attractions in one small space, Bath attracts people from all over the world. The tourist industry has risen eagerly to the challenge offered by this massive influx. But what about the locals? How do residents feel about having the world in their backyard?
Well, I think it's an excellent idea. Certainly. It helps the business, and it's nice to have fresh people in here.
There can't be an upward boom in tourism forever, and when that flattens out, some people are going to have to start thinking about, let's have some real industry, some real jobs, and have a town that the local people can enjoy more. You know, because you can't just sell things sell the souvenir trinkets to the tourists the whole time. That's just not the way, is it?
Sometimes, I must admit, when they push and shove you about, I don't always like it, but they bring revenue to the city, so therefore we need them.
I think it's a wonderful thing for Bath. It brings a great deal of money to Bath. It allows them a lot of funds to do wonderful renovation. When I came to Bath in 1976, the whole of most of the main streets, like Great Pulteney Street, were absolutely black. The funds that come to Bath allow them to do wonderful cleaning, renovation, restoration works. It does get a bit heavy if you live here, and there are giant coaches thundering past your door all the time. But I think without tourism, Bath would be a much poorer place.
If you're interested in gardens, there's some botanical gardens. If you just follow the road along here and go through, you come to botanical gardens, and they're lovely.
Milsom Street, always been the most fashionable shopping street in the town.
Not much fun for some of the residents, perhaps, but for us tourists, life couldn't be better. Apart from the thrill of simply being here, Bath's tourist services do so much to make you feel at home. But if you'd like to take your visit at a more leisurely pace, there's always the boat tour, which will take you up and down the River Avon. Bath City Council organise a walking tour with volunteer local guides. But in the evening, there's always the ever-popular ghost tour, which visits the sites of the strange and supernatural manifestations that have haunted Bath's murky past. It's a curious thing that most of these apparitions seem to have taken place in the local pubs. Then again, what better way to end the day than a visit to one of them? Cheers, me dear.
Some consider Bath to be the busking centre of Britain. Each year as the tourist trade increases, so do the number of buskers who come to the city, who range from normal musicians to jugglers and painters. We were interested to find out whether the citizens of Bath found these buskers interesting and entertaining, or a nuisance and obstruction. Can you go yet?
It's not easy to
have with me today Miss Jo Isaacs, a local shop owner in Bath. Miss Isaacs has frequent buskers outside her shop. How does this affect your business?
Well, I've been a shop owner now in Bath for 3 years, and as the tourist trade has increased, so has the busking problem. I find that the buskers tend to play outside the shop and they cause obstructions. People can't see the displays in the window. There's continuous noise all day long. It becomes irritating. At first it's quite pleasant, but when you've got this continuous music, 8 hours a day, it does become a little irritating.
What would you like to be seen done about the busking in Bath?
But I'd like to see something, as well as laws being tightened up, I'd like to see the same laws apply in, say, San Francisco as in Bath, whereas buskers have got a certain position on the street that they play in, and then that, is the only place they can play in. So this sort of restricts where they can play, and they can play in a certain place away from the shops where it's a bit more convenient and there are more where there is more room. And can we ask you what you think of the street position?
It's brilliant.
You enjoy it? You don't see them as a nuisance at all?
No, absolutely not. I think we ought to have them in every city, in every town. It's the only ones that play like him.
I like it. That's why I sat here.
It's very good.
And do you think buskers are a nuisance at all, or cause obstructions?
No, I like them.
You don't think they're a nuisance at all, or cause an obstruction?
No, I think it's pleasant.
Do you?
It certainly makes something when you're walking around. Bath gets particularly busy. It's quite nice and relaxing. If you ever sit down and listen to it.
No, which is a huge, great big place. No, I think it only adds to the quality of life.
Well, it seems like the message is clear. The majority of people in Bath welcome the buskers.
Every visitor to Bath is given something special. The freedom of one of England's finest architectural showplaces. For while Bath is a busy city with all the amenities of the 20th century, its ancient remains and elegant buildings, with the genteel atmosphere of a bygone age, give it an air of a living museum which never closes. While the city is preserved both in its fabric and in an outstanding variety of good museums, the 20th century has made some embellishments of its own. Bath has won many awards for its floral displays and greenery, which together with its landscape and a setting on the River Avon, give it a tremendous natural beauty. The city is also a cultural centre, with theatre productions and other events being staged throughout the year. Bath is also a fascinating shopping centre, where paved passages and narrow streets house small shops full of character. Elegant shopping centres like the Colonnades are slowly cropping up. Happily, to the modern visitor, the Georgian influence on Bath is not only confined to its foundations. It survives in the emphasis placed on eating and drinking by the city's impressive array of tea shops, restaurants, pubs and wine bars, many of them housed in buildings of historic interest. All of these attractions serve to make Bath one of the most popular tourist attractions in the United Kingdom, visited by thousands of overseas and local visitors throughout the year. Bath is well served by train and bus routes which run regularly from London.
This is the classical view of Bath.
one which projects an idyllic image to potential visitors. There is little doubt that Bath does have a romantic, almost seductive atmosphere, and in terms of beautiful cities, it is on a par with the best that Europe can offer. And because Bath itself lives up to the reputation created by the endless publicity campaigns, it is increasingly a place where people want to come. 2 million tourists visit Bath each year from all corners of the globe, and it has now been confirmed officially as one of the greatest cities in the world. Businesses of the city have embraced its new, highly profitable industry with tremendous enthusiasm. Bath has now moved into the fast lane of commerciality. Apart from tourists, other people have recently moved to Bath on a more permanent basis. These are the new affluent residents who arrived on the tide of the national property boom. Being only 1 hour and 15 minutes from London, Bath became an ideal alternative for people wanting to work but not live in the congestion of the capital. So they, with others, found it financially viable to invest in property in a place more comfortable and, until recently, cheaper than London. Shopping has also become an integral part of Bath's appeal. Many of its long-standing small shops have in recent years disappeared completely. As the designer stores take root, clearly reflecting the city's potential for generating high profits for its new traders. So, in the light of this rapid change to the character of Bath, what are the consequences for local people? Those who were here long before the boom took hold. Many of whom were of course born here, and like their ancestors, they spent their lives working in factories, shops, civil service, or for many, the tourist services. Some of the obvious consequences can be seen from a brief visit to the city. The streets are often uncomfortably crowded, and the volume of traffic is beginning to mirror the situation in London. And a majority of new shops are far too specialist and expensive to be accessible to people with more average incomes. So, in spite of these inconveniences, are local people benefiting in any way from the boom?
Tourism is obviously a central part of the economy in Bath, but many of the jobs it provides are low paid and part-time, and it's obviously seasonal, so it doesn't actually do a great deal to help the less well-off in Bath. It mainly benefits those who own the tourism industry. In fact, I think tourism can be to the detriment of many ordinary people in Bath, because it means that the priorities of the city council are directed towards the city centre and towards preserving the monuments in the city, and not much money is spent actually on the outlying regions or on the housing estates. Much of the council's budget goes towards boosting the tourism industry.
The residents tend to take a back seat, and the tourists are always put first, and they put a lot on for tourists and tend to sort of ignore the things the residents want. Things like the upmarket sort of shopping precincts that are around. Well, that's fine for tourists and people with a lot of money, but for the locals, it's it's not a very good thing. They don't seem to sort of take them into account very much.
It's all very posh, dressy shops, like that new clothes store on the corner. I've never seen one customer in there. It doesn't cater for ordinary families and working class families. It's very posh clothes shops there.
I think a balance has to be struck, There can't be an upward boom in tourism forever, and when that flattens out, some people are going to have to start thinking about let's have some real industry, some real jobs, and have a town that the local people can enjoy more. You know what I mean? Because you can't just sell things sell souvenir trinkets to the tourists the whole time. That's just not the way, is it?
So if I don't shop here, I buy all my children's clothes. I have to travel out to Bristol to buy my children's clothes. It's too dear in Bath.
The disappearance of the shop which served the person who lived here as opposed to the tourist has virtually disappeared.
Due to various economic factors, property has become a national focus in recent years. Consequently, its value has risen dramatically. Bath represents a microcosm of this situation and allows us to clearly see its effects on the less affluent of the population.
Well, most average income young couples just can't afford to buy a house in Bath, with house prices even at the lower end of the market being 80 to 90,000. Most people are actually moving out of Bath in order to be able to work here. The only hope for young families in Bath would be some kind of shared ownership scheme where the City Council or another public body or housing associations actually allow young people to part rent and part buy their houses. Unfortunately, with the cost of houses in Bath now, even that seems very impractical.
But it's the young married people and the single people that can't afford to live in Bath. It's like living, from a work point of view, it's like living in London with London prices, but without the London waiting and the extra wages.
Any accommodation around here is just so expensive that you have to have like loads of money to get a deposit together, and by the time you've moved in, it's just like it's not worth it.
Couldn't really afford in any case to live. I've recently started work again, but I found it very difficult to live, to rent my own accommodation.
For example, my next door neighbour here had 4 children. She lived in the square for 34 years and brought up all her children here. None of them can afford to live, to have bought their first homes in Bath. They've had to move outside, had to go to places like Yate outside Bristol, to Peasdown, and move out into small estates geared for first-time buyers, but right out of Bath, which means that they have to commute in. And that seems to me to destroy some of the continuity of a life of a small city like this, if the indigenous people have to move out. It's just like villages everywhere. It's happened in villages, but it also happens in big villages like this.
At the extreme end of the spectrum, there is the dramatic increase of homelessness. The cost of rented accommodation, along with the shortage of council properties, has literally left people on the streets. Nearly 1,000 people are already on the council house priority list, and unless married with children, the chances of being rehoused are slim.
There are about 900 people priority cases on the housing list at the moment, and it's extremely difficult to say how long some of them will have to wait. Many of them will have to wait several years before they've any chance at all of being offered council accommodation. And in many cases, the offer that's made to them may not be appropriate to their needs. There are several hundred more who haven't got any chance of being offered accommodation at all. Those are people who aren't treated as priority cases or who haven't got any housing points. And those are mostly single young people. If you're a single young person, fit and not pregnant, you've got no chance whatsoever of being housed.
The council have put it in category A, which is the highest group you can be in for rehousing, but that Scott is now 21 months and we still haven't been moved. Every week I go down there, but they say there's worse people off, which I understand there is, but it's not fair for my daughter of nearly 8 to be sharing a room with a toddler. We have a 2-bedroom council flat, but we have 2 children sharing a small box room. And we need to have a separate bedroom because we can't put him into a bed because there isn't room in the bedroom for him to go into a bed, so he's still in his cot.
At the other end of the spectrum, amongst the more affluent, are those who have benefited from the property boom. Many who bought property before the boom have suddenly found their investment to be worth 4 or 5 times as much.
When we bought this house, it cost us £51,000. It was the biggest and most expensive house we'd ever bought, and we realised that it would be the last one that we bought of that size. It's recently been valued at £220,000 plus, and that's an enormous difference and one that we never expected. That has enabled us to think about lots of options. And one of the options that we thought about and decided to go for was to realise some of that money by remortgaging or taking out a capital loan and buying another property in Glasgow.
So, what is Bath City Council's position in all this? Unfortunately, no member of the Housing Committee was available for interview during the recording of this programme. But according to published information, there is a commitment to catering for the housing needs of local people.
The Housing Committee is actively committed to finding solutions to the housing problem in Bath. In spite of an increasing demand on limited resources, practical steps are being taken. New initiatives are continually being identified and implemented, especially with regard to assisting the first-time buyers and elderly owner-occupiers. With regards to council housing, our strategy must be seen against the background of central government policy and the availability of land. A number of council house building projects are in progress at the moment, which will bring relief to many of the low-income members of the community.
As the local politicians continue to question each other's views on housing, life in the city goes on. The local people may geographically be in the same place that they were born, but time has taken them to a very different city. A city where market forces have made essentials unobtainable to all but a few, and the new neighbours are a continuous haze of tourists. But in spite of being forced into the dizzy heights of commercialism, post-boom Bath remains a provincial town. As if surrounded by a cloak of cotton wool, the atmosphere remains safe and tranquil. But in a city of such beauty and affluence, it is often dangerously easy to forget how the changes affect the indigenous population.
Thank you.